What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Tuesday night, August 22nd, 2023, about 11:23 p.m. California time, and latest activity looks like a 2.8 over here across the area of Costa Rica. One of the latest quakes there on the Earthquake 3D globe. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it and see what we got going on here. Pretty good cluster of activity here over the last 24 hours across the Tonga area and the Kermadec Trench. The latest one, a 4.9, 407 kilometers deep. Most of these earthquakes out here over the last 24 hours have been pretty deep out here in this area. So we're still kind of watching this region for some potential movement upstream, but also the area around New Zealand needs to catch up a little bit in terms of earthquake activity. Looking at the Earthquake 3D globe here, still seeing some movement across the Indonesia Islands area and up along the Java Trench. As you can see, quite a few threes, even a four-pointer, one of the more recent quakes up here. Looks like it's trying to kick up here across the coast of Sumatra. We'll continue to watch that. Also some activity stirring up here in Japan. One thing I've noticed here is the earthquake activity bouncing back and forth here in between the Himalayas. Movement in eastern Afghanistan, deeper activity, and also some movement here across the, where's that 5-pointer at? Let me see exactly where that's at. Looks like that's, well, USGS reporting that as a 4.8 northern Iran area. But I've been watching this here back and forth, and we've been missing out on some activity out here as far as the plate boundary goes across the Himalayas. And this is a major stressed area in terms of earthquake dynamics. The general plate movement up here, of course, it's a subduction zone, right? Let's see, which one are we going to pick up here? It looks maybe like over here across the area of India. You got a couple different plates here at hand. You got the Eurasia plate, for the most part, creating a subduction zone here with the India plate. Notice the two arrows pointing towards each other. I'm not for sure what the accumulated slip rate here or stress rate in this area is, but you know, we've been seeing a lot of earthquake activity out here across the divergent boundaries areas in Turkey, and very minimal earthquake activity specifically here across Nepal and the Himalayas. So I wanted to pull up some historical data here specifically in this region because I think we're a little bit overdue in terms of some larger scale movement here across the Himalayas. Again, that's a major subduction zone, and I'm guessing the slip rate here is somewhat high, considering that's some of the highest mountains out there. So the last earthquake, it looks like in this area, I kind of drew up the earthquake catalog book here and drew a rectangle over this area. 7.3 back in Nepal. 2015, but this area is very capable of producing something much stronger. We're talking about 8-pointers here. And the last 8-pointer was back in 1950 over here across this plate boundary, where it kind of bends out here. Notice that bend in the plate boundary. Very powerful earthquake back in 1950. That's a pretty large earthquake. This whole region is capable of seeing some very large quakes. Back in 1934, there was a 8.0 as well in this area. So I think in terms of some larger scale movement, we may be potentially overdue. I don't think it takes a whole lot of thousands of years to accumulate quite a bit of stress here to produce a big earthquake. So watch this area closely. I've just been noticing this pattern here of a lot of earthquake activity stretching up here across Sumatra, into the Myanmar area, China region, but very minimal movement here across this plate boundary, and that's a little on the concerning side. So we'll continue to watch the Himalaya mountains. That region there again is, I think it's somewhat primed for some movement. All right, across New Zealand, let's double check the New Zealand map here real quick. Stand by for a second while I key up the GeoNet servers here from the New Zealand area. I don't want to do that. Let me see. I'm going to take them, and I'm going to put them up here at the top of my list here. Because for some reason, I always tend to skip over them. All right, 4 hours ago, 3.5 outside of Wellington area, it looks like. In between North and South Island area. That was a felt earthquake. It looks like 23 folks reported feeling that there around the Wellington area mainly. Mostly weak shaking across that area of New Zealand. Let's see what else we got here for the earthquake drums. We really haven't seen too much elevated movement here across the New Zealand area. There is the earthquake there, that 3-pointer that kicked up here, shown up across the area of South Island and North Island as well. That's going to be the seismic signature right here in the last few hours. But for the most part, things have mellowed back out across New Zealand for now. But man, you know, we did see some activity stirring up out here, over here in the Tasman Sea area, across from Australia to the New Zealand region, with that earthquake activity last night, or yesterday, I should say. So we'll continue to watch this. New Zealand, obviously a major area. I was just looking at my earthquake rock up here. It's kind of swinging. And technically, there's no reason for that to be swinging right now. I don't have any fans here specifically in the computer room. It's a little bit odd. All right, I don't know if we had an earthquake up here in Northern California or not, but it's kind of stirring up here. Got the earthquake rock swinging back and forth slightly. Let me check out the earthquake seismographs. I don't really see anything kicking up right now. So we'll check back on that in a minute here. Southern California, what's going on down here? Still seeing an earthquake swarm out here across the Santa Paula area. The last earthquake was a 1.7, so things look like they may be tapering off, but this has been an earthquake pattern or an earthquake swarm here for the past couple days prior and following the 5.1 that struck up here just a couple days ago. We're looking at 179 earthquakes here in the mix. Some say it's oil field related. There's definitely some oil fields out here in the mountainous regions here outside of Ventura. Looks like some of these may be, well, it's hard to tell. Unless I go down there and specifically look at this myself. I'm kind of up in the air on whether I think this is oil field related earthquake activity or just general plate stress in this region. It's on a fault system here that accumulates some stress here over a long period. And the last earthquake was sufficiently a couple thousands of years ago. And this area is capable of producing a 7.3 out here. So, you know, it's I'm kind of leaning more towards the stress out here in Southern California right now. Up against the San Andreas Fault, a couple smaller quakes scattered out and about. Loma Linda area, Moreno Valley. Mostly 1s and 2s out there. No major swarms kicking up aside from this one up here outside of Los Angeles. And maybe a little bit here across this desert here near the Octella Wells area, but those are mostly smaller microquakes in the 1 range. San Andreas Fault pretty quiet for now. Some movement along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault near Parkfield. That's a Parkfield section. 2.0 kicked up there earlier. I did see that seismic signature pop up on the seismograph stations earlier. Kind of neat to look at. And there's that earthquake out here off the coast of Eureka. 3:33 in the morning for a 3.3. Goodness, that was early this morning. Cascadia subduction zone area, pretty quiet offshore. 1 earthquake up north, 2.3. Let's double check that and see what we got for the Cascadia tremor. 162 epicenters of tremor. That's the number they're giving us tonight. Still not a lot. It's been a little periodic out here, just very minimal in terms of looking at the past historical trends here. And tremor is kind of a new thing. We didn't monitor it back in the 1800s, early 1900s. This is all a new monitoring event in terms of the subduction zone out here across the Cascadia. And hopefully one day, well, it's been 323 years since the last major earthquake out here, since the last 9.0. Hopefully, we'll be able to look at this map, this chart, and discover and figure out when the next Cascadia tremor or the next Cascadia earthquake will happen. Of course, it's going to happen, right? That 9-pointer. But looking at trends and these patterns, we'll be able to have a better idea of, maybe when the Cascadia is about ready to go. 323 years. The average interval, they say, between 260 and 400 years or so. So we're there. It could happen. And it's not only the full rupture that we're worried about. It's possible that we could just see a partial rupture down here across the Northern California area. We're talking about an 8.5 or so. And that would be sufficient enough to create a tsunami and some damage out there. But anyway, looking at the models here, the trend since about October of last year, we really haven't seen any major tremor event. There's been a couple peaking earlier this year. We're in a very minor stage right now of tremor. What that means? Well, it's hard to say. Whether stress is building up out here or not, I think it's something to watch. Across the Cascades, what do we got here? Across Mount Rainier, 2.7. Goodness, that's kind of a somewhat a larger size earthquake out here across the Mount Rainier area earlier this afternoon. So in that case, we definitely have to go check the volcanic seismicity map at Mount Rainier. I'm sure that 2-pointer is going to show up nicely across these seismograph stations. Guaranteed. Watch. See if you guys can point it out. Pending these are working. These are not, I don't believe these are them. This is the last couple hours. This is some type of interference here. Earthquakes, I think we all know what earthquakes look like. They're going to be well-defined earthquakes such as that. Notice that seismic signature right here. Well-defined, 2.7 near Mount Rainier. There we go. So aside from that, these little bitty specks out here, little bitty spikes, are much smaller, probably 0.1 or below. So there's no major earthquake activity going on across the Mount Rainier area. Although that it's kind of nice to see that little 2.7 pop up there. A couple other smaller quakes out there as well. And some very minimal movement here across Mount St. Helens. What do we got? About 4 earthquakes of very small magnitude. So, well, since we're on it, let's go see what's going on at Mount St. Helens. There's that small earthquake activity occurring at the summit area in the red circles. Very small earthquake activity. This is the last 2 weeks of earthquake activity, it looks like. Nothing major. I mean, granted, there is definitely some earthquake activity, but it doesn't look like any major swarming going on, at least according to the map they're giving us. Let's take a look at the raw data and see what we have. Looks pretty calm, flatlined. Not for sure if this is an earthquake or some type of interference here. There's an earthquake. A couple smaller ones here. Right here as well. But these events, I don't know what they are. They're definitely not earthquake related, but there's a handful of smaller quakes there across the Mount St. Helens area. And they're actually doing a pretty decent job of showing those. All right, Yellowstone National Park here in Wyoming, near the Hebgen Lake Estates out here. Showing some seismic activity. Let's double check the Yellowstone seismograph station, see what we have pulling up for what's going on. Hello, McFly. No seismographs found at this date. I'm guessing we're over that little time frame here. Let me see what we got. Here's from the last. Well, this looks like today's time frame, right? Well, I don't know. It looks like they may be having a little issue here. 2100 UTC time, but I think we're way past that, right? We're at 6. We're almost at 700 UTC time, so this data is a little old. Not for sure what's going on there. This is some weather events from earlier yesterday. This is all old data. So we'll come back and check and see what's going on a little bit later, maybe tomorrow. See if they got those up. All right, the rest of the map here. What do we got going on out here in Texas? The circles are getting bigger. Imagine that. 4.0 out here. Outside of Pecos, Texas. I don't think I have to show you guys what's out here. Right? We all know what's out here. There's quite a few oil fields out here. Quite a few. And wastewater disposal facilities. This 4-pointer occurred. Looks like some kind of pond out here. Although this looks fairly natural. There is oil fields and pumping operations locally nearby within probably a mile or so. This may be some newer pumping operations out here that's not listed up here on the Looks like the Digital Globe GeoEye Earth Star Geographics webpage. So this may be old satellite imagery, but maybe some newer pumping operations out there. I don't know. Either way, some earthquake activity occurring out there outside of Pecos, Texas, in the oil fields. Some movement in Nebraska earlier today, it looks like. New Madrid seismic zone. That's another area we have to watch. You know, it's definitely a dangerous area. 2.6 occurring outside of Wilson City, Missouri. That is in the major seismically active area in terms of the New Madrid seismic zone. This area is capable of producing, what was it, upper 7s, low grade 8s. That type of magnitude out there right now would create some devastation. The last one was back in the 1800s, so slip rate out here, accumulated slip rate's relatively slow, but just these earthquakes right now, seeing them, you know, periodically over time just lets us know that this fault system out here is very much alive. All right, go back here to the all magnitudes. Puerto Rico out here, a couple smaller quakes, 2s and 3s it looks like. Nothing major going on. South America region here. Let's go ahead and see what we got. 3.3 coming up here around the Java Trench once again. Again, I still think there's some movement that's kind of working its way up here. I've been watching that throughout the day today, so watch for some further large-scale activity. A couple 4s here off the coast of Ecuador, potentially. Is that right? Peru, Ecuador area. Seeing some movement up here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Nothing showing up on the USGS map yet. The Atlantic Ocean, Azores area, seeing some movement. Iceland as well. Just very minimal movement here. There's that 5-pointer, northern Iran. Again, watch the Himalayas. I don't know. I got a hunch about this area. Things are, I think, a little tense within that plate boundary. And I'll just kind of watch it and see how it goes. Australia 2.5 showing up there on the map. Nothing going on across the Mariana Islands here. Japan Trench and the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench look pretty quiet aside from that 4.8. The Aleutian Trench up here, some movement. Some older activity here over the last 24 hours. A couple 2s and 3s out here across the Aleutian Trench, but nothing major going on there for now. Let's check out Hawaii. Big island of Hawaii, Mauna Kea 3.0, just east of Mauna Kea. It's a little interesting there. A little deeper earthquake there outside of that volcano. Of course, the further west and northwest you go, the older volcanoes are not active. That's just because of the hot spot that the Hawaiian Islands sit on out here in the Pacific. Newer land going to be accumulating out here across Pahala and the Loihi Seamount. So get in your bids if you want to purchase some land out here in a couple million years or so. I don't know how long it's going to take, but yeah. So for now, what do we got? 2.2. Somewhat shallow earthquake here at the Kilauea volcano. It doesn't look super active right now. The latest informational statement from earlier today lets us know that, well, things are not erupting. The only thing that's of noteworthy to watch is the elevated earthquake activity. Haven't really seen anything major going on, but we'll continue to watch that for some signs of unrest there across the Big Island in terms of the Kilauea volcano. All right, space weather activity. We did have a long duration surprise M flare, low grade M flare, but it was a long duration event here from a sunspot that I really wasn't expecting it to happen from here. AR 3405 had this little event here, as Solar Ham is showing, but I believe that was also associated with a filament eruption. Kind of created that type of setup there. Not for certain, though, if this is Earth-directed as far as that eruption goes. We'll have to watch that for the Space Weather Prediction Center here in the coming days. Again, that was from 3405. 3405 is this one right here. The latest imagery. Yeah, it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't really look all that impressive. So I'm actually somewhat surprised, but hey, you know, surprises have been coming about here in many different forms. But aside from that, we do have quite a few sunspots approaching the visible disk here, and some that have made their presence known here. A couple different sunspots showing some complex structure. We welcome 3413 and 3415 here on the visible disk. We'll continue to watch these for some elevated flaring activity. Right now, 90% chance of C flare. M flare at 10. I think these will go up here in the coming days with the arrival of these new sunspots. X flare around 1%. But again, watch those for elevated numbers here soon. No major auroras have been produced, or major CMEs have been produced. So therefore, the aurora forecast is pretty minimal. Again, we'll watch, see if anything got blasted off from this filament eruption. Again, this is a northwestern quadrant. It was somewhat facing Earth. Not 100% certain, though, if anything got shut off in our direction. But we'll continue to watch that. Storm Prediction Center, things are very minimal for the most part. Not seeing any major severe weather threats out there. And then look at the numerical model here that shows the trends out here. There's I'm sure it's tropical depression now scooting across the Mexico and Texas border out there. Far as the future goes, that's going to continue into the Four Corners area, providing them with more rain than we get here in Northern California. Goodness. Maybe I need to move out there to New Mexico or Arizona. I don't know. Another tropical system down here. Look at this off the coast of Baja. Wanting to make its way known into Southern California again. That would be historic if we see two tropical storms there. Well, I mean, it was already historic having one. But two, goodness, that would probably cause a little bit of panic out there. End of the world. But we'll watch that. This is a little far out into the 2nd of September. But we'll keep an eye on this area. It is definitely tropical in nature. As far as any major cool downs, major heat spells, let's go ahead and check this out here real quick. This is going to be right now. Here's the heat building out there in the center portion of the country. I know you guys are not liking it. I hear it all the time on social media. I'm tired of the hundreds. I'm tired of the heat. Well, you know, you guys can have it. Out here along the West Coast, yeah, it's keep it over there. You guys can have it. That's all I'm going to say. But, you know, my words really mean nothing. So it doesn't look like there's going to be any major high-pressure system building out here across the West Coast. That high pressure will break down out here across the Great Lakes area, providing some cooler, well, I wouldn't say cooler, but it looks like maybe some more average temperatures out there for you folks. And I'm not liking this pattern. In fact, I need to back out of here a little bit and see what this looks like here in the North Pacific. I do not like that one bit. That is a massive ridging system here across the western or eastern Pacific. This is our I don't know, somewhat semi-permanent high pressure system out there in the Pacific that gives us often times some very dry winters. So I'm hoping this will scoot off. We'll watch that. It looks like it may be sticking around here for a little bit. Notice that building, declining, and then it builds back in. Builds back better, right? Out here in the Gulf of Alaska. That's not good for pattern changes out here along the West Coast. But stuff like this will provide some dips here in the jet stream. Cooler weather across a good portion of the country if that does take place. We'll definitely continue to watch that, though. All right, folks. I'm going to jump off here, I think, and continue on. What do we got here? Cone Peak, Hawaii. I think that's that two-pointer that kicked in here across the, well, it looks like maybe a 1.9. Either way, earthquake activity showing up there across the Hawaii stations. Hawaii up here, and then Cone Peak, Hawaii. Notice those two distinct signatures. And for the most part, the rest of the seismograph stations look pretty quiet. But again, keep an eye on California. I'm going to leave the earthquake watch overnight. If things slow down, or yeah, maybe if they slow down, I'll take this down tomorrow. But we're still seeing some elevated activity here across the Ventura area, and scattered movement up against the San Andreas Fault. Again, we'll leave that up for the night here. Either way, just, always good to have an earthquake plan out there, folks. All right, let's see what else is there. I think that's about it. I just had my lights dim here. Not for sure what's going on. I don't think there was an earthquake. This rock is still kind of swinging back and forth, so I think it may be just from maybe some fans from my computer that are just swinging barely back and forth, but most of the time it doesn't do that. It's kind of weird. All right, we're out of here. Have a good night. We'll catch you guys back here sometime tomorrow. Take care.